You're listening to the Geriatric Mamas Podcast with Jessica Raziri
and Sonia Tapley.
Hey mamas, are past lives real? We came across a viral Facebook group post about a child who started to describe a possible past life to her mom, and over 140 other moms commented with a similar story. So, of course, we got curious. We're going to start by sharing the Facebook post, top comments, and then get into research, including a list of things your child might say to you if they're trying to tell you about a past life. And we'll share that closer to the end of the episode. Please subscribe and enjoy. Mamas, I love a full and silky texture in my face creams because they feel so healing and comforting to my dry, thirsty skin. Well, the award-winning, best-selling, lightweight moisture release water cream by Honest Beauty called Hydrogel Cream refreshes and cools my skin on application and leaves a dewy finish. As I mentioned on the Hope-isode, Kathy's story, I love mixing Hydrogel Cream into my foundation for a healthy-looking glow. Infused with jojoba and squalene to help hydrate and soothe thirst, plus 2 sizes of hyaluronic acid to help soften and firm, reducing the appearance of fine lines. Honest Beauty's Hydrogel Cream will provide a beautiful glow for very dry skin. We're leaving the link below in our show notes. Drink up, mamas.
Mamas, I want to have rosé all day, have fun, and let myself live a little without feeling drunk or feeling hungover the next day. So I treat myself by adding rosé tinted glasses to my sparkling water or lemonade. If you're like me and you're looking for calm daytime energy while feeling alert, present, and uplifted because, well, you know, you're a mom now. Adaptogenic and antioxidant-rich ingredients make rosé tinted glasses from Apothecary great for those battling feelings of stress and looking to curb signs of aging with improved skin tone and moisture. Its tincture format makes it easy to drop wherever you're making it. It's perfect for busy working moms, busy stay-at-home moms who are looking for mood and energy support on the go. We're leaving a link below and in our show notes. So cheers, mamas!
This episode, I'm so excited about it. This is like stuff that I geek out about all of the time. And for those of you that are watching the video, we have a little bit of a different setup going on. This is just a test. I don't know how I feel about it. Definitely see more of my body than usual. So we'll see how I feel about it in editing, but bear with us. I don't know how our sound is going to be, but
yeah, hopefully
it's gonna give it a try. This is something that I've been personally researching for quite a while when I'm like, can't sleep and I'm just kind of like doom scrolling Google and just kind of like looking up random things.
Yeah.
I like feel like I've definitely been on this earth before. I definitely feel like I have a past life and I've heard so many stories. There's just like way too many stories for it not to be a thing. So
yeah. There's like this book my mom introduced me to. It was about this Olympian and like after he died, like I guess he like had a motorcycle accident and he died and he came back to life or something. And so he like remembers the consciousness and he 1000% believed in like the soul living on in between lives. And so he ended up writing this whole book about it, and it like brings you into, I don't know, stuff by like, this guy named Ram Dass and like all that stuff. So it's like it can get very, very woo-woo, but the stuff that we're going to be talking about today, I feel like is a little bit more solid just because of, you know, the scientists that we're going to mention and all that. And it's just like crazy the stuff that the other moms had to say. So
yeah.
The viral older mom Facebook group post about reincarnation says, "Hello moms, I have a 5-year-old, beautiful, clever girl. I had her at age 45. She's my first and only child. However, the thing is that for a few months, my daughter has been saying that she had a different mom before me, a brother and a dog. Her other mom was not a nice person, and now she's with me. She likes me a lot because I'm a nice mom. She cuddles me a lot, she tells me I love you a lot, and I do it a lot too, so she learned it from me, I think. She even pointed out a house telling me that it was her previous home. We've moved since she was born, but from an apartment to a house in a different part of the country where houses look different. When she tells me this, I always listen and reassure her that she is with me now. I believe her. Have you ever experienced this?" So one commenter says, "Hi, my daughter was the same. She remembered several past lives at age 7. She no longer remembers anything, but used to talk about her daughter Sarah. She would sing, 'I miss you, Sarah.' And when we met someone by the name of Sarah, she'd say, 'That's my baby's name.' She talked about her dog Lucky and her dad passing away when she was young and having to move to Paris." I can't imagine, like, the sadness that might have been there in the little girl without her being able to process it. Like, maybe the emotion didn't come, but just, like, the thought of losing your, not being with your daughter, passing away, and then remembering you had a daughter, I would feel like I abandoned her. I don't know.
I wonder, because it's like, I know, and this isn't about me, but I'm just like thinking about when I was younger, and I know I told you that I had like a lot of deja vu. I wonder if it's like one of those things where it's like, I don't know that there's necessarily like, I'm not saying that the emotions aren't there, aren't about, but it's like you just have these like memories and you're kind of numb to it a little bit because it's like you're not that person anymore, but you do remember those things.
Yeah.
Because like I had growing up like really crazy deja vu, like almost all the time, where I've been here before, I know this, but it wasn't that I had any emotions connected to it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's how it is, but I just kind of wonder if it's like, that's why they're also so little too. They're so young that it's just like very factual.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like this is familiar. This was my daughter. This was, I don't know.
So there was this one video that I watched during research. It was by one of the scientists we're going to talk about later, but he had a case where it was an 18-month-old girl, and she would pick up her little toy phone. She's trying to call someone, like urgently trying to call someone. Her parents kept asking, she kept saying the same name, and then like as she got a little bit older, she could say, "My daughter so-and-so, my daughter Isis," if that was her name. And like she was very serious about it. And so she kept growing up talking about her daughter, who clearly she was closer with than her other kids, because when she got older, she said she had more kids and a husband that she was still very much in love with. Well, it comes, like, she ended up remembering her name and, like, remembering her, like, there was an actual family that was still alive in the world with the daughter with that name and other kids whose mother had passed away.
So young. It was her mother.
Yes. And so she ended up, they were still alive. Like, it was just, like, overlapping lifespans or overlapping lifetimes, so it's very creepy. But even at 25, she still remembered her former family. And
there was emotions, like she felt
full emotions.
Oh gosh,
like maybe not.
Did she ever like go and meet with the family?
Probably not. I think she probably ended up in like a psych ward because like. I don't remember. I don't think I listened to the full song.
That's crazy. Like, she ended up in a psych ward. No big deal.
Probably, like, at a certain point, like, when she was 18 months, and there's no way for her little mind to make anything like that up, it's much more believable.
Yeah.
But then as you become an adult, just the whole, like, emotion thing reminded me of that.
Well, it totally debunks everything that I just thought. Yeah, actually, they can have emotions because let me tell you this story where there's a lot of emotions involved.
When your lifetimes overlap each other.
Yeah, that's
and
crazy.
And then you're able to, like, remember everything. I feel like that would be weird.
A lot of the stories that I was, like, researching and finding, I mean, there were some that were present. Like, that's crazy that it was, like, she could literally Facebook stalk this family and know that was hers. But a lot of the ones that I was finding, it's like they were showing signs of like being somebody who was reincarnated from like 400 years ago and like crazy stuff.
It's probably more as we get into it, that's probably more common. So the second commenter said, "This happened to me when I was younger. We went to a new town one day, which involved going over a river, and I recognized it was where I used to live when I was alive before. And apparently, I was able to tell my dad exactly how to get to my old house. We drove down the road, and there was the house exactly as I said. It was the right house number, right colored door, mid-terrace. I was only just 4 at the time." Isn't that insane?
Could you imagine if Annabelle literally like just started like instructing you? She told you about this house and then like she's like, turn left, turn right, go over the hill, go this way, and then literally there's the house. Like, what would you do?
So crazy. I know.
Because that's just a year older.
Well, now that I've read all of this, I would 100% believe her.
Yeah.
But before discovering all of this, I might have been like, okay, and kind of like just brushed it off or like told Mike or
and like, we'll just have your father deal with that.
Annabelle here before and like said anything about it, you know? I don't know. So then the third comment says, my son did something similar when he was about 3 to 4. He would say, when I was a man, I wore a uniform. And he'd describe an old army uniform, World War II style, in detail. He'd tell me places he had been, and he knew routes on journeys better than I do now. He grew out of it, but it did spook me sometimes. He also used to sleepwalk.
Also,
Yeah.
I wonder if while he was sleepwalking, he was just like, in my day.
Yeah.
I don't know why he has that accent, but I just feel like that's what was happening.
Like a little bit of his old self came
Yeah.
back. Number 4, me and my sister used to talk about where we lived before. We both had exactly the same memories of a big white house with the trees in the front and a white wooden fence. We used to ask our mom if we could go back there. Also, my daughter is my youngest, who is now 17. From when she was 3, she used to tell me that my mom, her nanny, was her mom. When I would correct her and say, no, she's my mom and your nanny, she would say, no, Mom, she is your mom now, but she was my mommy before you became my mom. She told me that she was in my mom's belly for a while until she fell through a door, and then she wasn't in Nan's belly anymore, but in a room. She was in that room for a very long time, and then when the door appeared, she went through it and was in my belly, and that was why Nan was her mom too. So crazy. My mom had a miscarriage before she fell pregnant with my younger brother. So that's even crazier.
Yeah, I actually read a story, one of the stories I was, actually not read, come on. It was a YouTube video, but about kind of a similar thing where this daughter was telling her mom that like before she was her mom, basically she was in her aunt, for her aunt's name, but like she was in her aunt's belly.
Mm-hmm.
And the mom was like, it was her sister-in-law, and she's just like, what do you mean? And then she's like, yeah, I was in her belly for a while, and she like was talking about like how it was great there and everything. It was warm.
Mm-hmm.
Really wet, and then like wasn't in there anymore, and then she's like, well, where did you go? She's like, well, I went back home, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, very as a matter of fact, and they're like, what do you mean like home? And actually I think it was a little boy, he described it as like this big, kind of to me sounded like an orphanage basically. It was like this big like house for all these kids, and there was this big library, this big room of like all these books. And some of the other stories I've read, I've heard, I keep saying reading, all the other stories, that a lot of them that I had heard before, also these kids described like this similar room. And it's like just walls and walls of books. It was kind of like a big library. All the information you could ever want of like the world basically was in this one room. And then I guess he was there for a while, and then he said, they told me, he didn't really describe who they were, but he's like, they told me that I was now going to be going to you guys, like his now mom and dad. He's like, and then I woke up one morning and I was in your belly. And like he literally was like describing like the water there was a lake, but like you put your hands in the water and you don't actually get wet, and the water just comes right off of you. You can open your mouth, you can breathe under the water, and like it was just like all this weird stuff.
That was so crazy.
Yeah. So it was kind of the same thing. And then, and then back to relating it to the story, her sister-in-law, so the belly that he was saying that he was in before, her sister-in-law had a miscarriage like 10 years prior.
Oh my God.
And so if he like was there and then went back and then came.
Yeah.
And then the mom was saying how like she felt conflicted because part of her wanted to share this with her sister-in-law, but then the other part of her was nervous that she was going to be like, well, then that's my baby. And like, it was just a really awkward, uncomfortable thing.
Awkward. Especially 'cause, like, what if she also doesn't believe her? Like, because if you believe it and you have like this hunch that like your child is probably right, or telling you something valid, and then the other person's like, are you crazy? Yeah. There's also that possibility.
That's awkward. It's just crazy too. And the more stories that you hear, there's a lot of similarities. And then it gets to a point where it's like, okay, like there has to be some truth to this. Like there's so many things that line up that are just seem so exact and like very specific details.
Yeah. So the last comment that we're going to read says, my almost 3-year-old has been talking about her baby who died. Her name was Blossom and she was 7 months old. A yucky, scary man picked her up and she died. She said the yucky man was in the house and made the mom and dad die too. Not very nice. She has also seen spirits, an elderly couple, so we showed her a heap of different family photos and she pointed to her great-grandparents who had both passed on. My toddler is a lot older spiritually than most kids her age. Her big sister was the same. She was a lot older than her age and used to talk about all of her fairy friends and their names. She would say this quite often and also told me she had met my grandfather and knew who he was when I showed her his photo. She said he was at my grandma's house, he was washing his hands in the bathroom and turned around, smiled, and said hello. She described exactly what he was wearing. It was what he always wore, and we don't have any photos of him in those clothes.
Oh my gosh.
Right? It's so weird.
That is so weird.
I would be so creeped out in that situation just because, like, I feel like older people and, like, older men specifically, when it's more, it feels almost more ghost-like.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It does. Like they're coming back with like a message. And
But if he was just, like, smiling and saying hello, she probably felt comfortable.
Probably. So one commenter left a photo of a book called The Forgetting Time, and several people mentioned that it was a good read. There are a lot more books on the subject of reincarnation. Do they come in Audible? Asking for myself.
They do. I've downloaded one. I don't think it was I downloaded the one that we're going to talk about next.
Some based on research and some based on scientific exploration. So we'll leave them in the show notes for you. There's an interview in Psychology Today by Mark Matusik with Barbara Graham, who's the author of the book What Jonah Knew, that explains some of what's been found through research on reincarnation. Here is what they spoke about. Mark asked Barbara, since your debut novel, What Jonah Knew, touches on past lives, what do you say to reincarnation skeptics? Barbara replied, I say look at the evidence. There are decades of credible research led by the late psychiatrist Ian Stevenson and his successor, child psychiatrist Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia. They've accumulated more than 2,500 cases of kids with spontaneous recall of a previous life. These are young kids who generally began talking about a former life between the ages of 2 and 4, and whose statements have been verified. In a 1999 interview with the New York Times, Stevenson said, science develops ideas of what is, so it becomes very difficult to force scientists to look at new data that may challenge existing concepts. I'm not trying in any way to replace what we know about genetics or environmental influences. All I'm offering is that past lives may contribute a third factor that may fill in some of the gaps in our knowledge. Agreed. Mark asked, so if a therapist with no background in this had a young patient with these sort of memories, how do you recommend they work with the child? Barbara replied, 70% of kids with memories of a previous life recall dying by murder, suicide, or an accident, and more than 35% show intense fear related to the manner of death. In his book, Return to Life, Tucker describes it as the kind of avoidant behavior that is part of the official DSM criteria for PTSD. For example, children who remember drowning are often terrified of water. I'm not a therapist, but I imagine that treating these kids would be no different than treating any child with phobias or who has experienced trauma and exhibits signs of PTSD, listening to them and taking seriously what they say. Mark asked, why do you think every child doesn't have memories of a past life? Barbara replied, I think it comes down to trauma or a degree of distress. If you accept the possibility that there is some continuity of consciousness after death, then it seems logical that those who die suddenly or violently would carry more of an imprint from the previous lifetime than a 95-year-old who slips off peacefully in the night. What's more, according to Tucker, dying young increases the likelihood that a child will later report memories of a previous life. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And also the idea of like, if you had a fulfilled life and you die peacefully in your bed and it's nothing traumatizing, you're not going to necessarily remember it versus something that's like really horrific and it's going to stand out to you. That's a really good point. Mark asked, so you're suggesting that therapists should treat children with disturbing past life memories the same way they would treat other trauma? Barbara replied, yes. Being believed can be very helpful. Carol Bowman, who has been documenting these sort of cases for decades, says to parents in her book, Children's Past Lives, that the memories are their opportunity to heal unfinished business that otherwise might cause problems as your child grows into an adult. It's my understanding that kids who are allowed to speak openly about their memories have an easier time letting go of the past and adapting to their present life. That's how you handle trauma as you talk about it.
Yeah.
Wow. Mark asked, "Can you give me an example?" Barbara replied, "Yes. Tucker worked with a little boy named Cameron who lived in Glasgow, Scotland, and who at 2.5 began talking about his life in Barra, a remote island in the Outer Hebrides. Apologies if that's incorrect. We're doing our best. By the time he turned 3, Cameron was insisting he wanted to go to Barra to my other family. He offered numerous details, including the family surname, Robertson, and was convinced that his Robertson father had been hit by a car and killed." Crazy. Mark asked, "He said all this when he was 3? Barbara replied, "Yes. And when Cameron was 5, Tucker accompanied him and his family to Barra to investigate and search for Robertson's home. When they finally found it and were allowed inside, Tucker reports that Cameron looked very sad. His mother, Norma, asked him if he missed his Barra mother." Wait, she was there and she talked to him?
I don't think so.
Oh.
Maybe they just passed away.
Maybe.
They'd all gone, they'd all passed away.
Got it. Cameron nodded, leaning into her for comfort, and though not every detail the boy remembered could be verified, his mother said that Cameron was much calmer after the trip to Barra. In Return to Life, Tucker explained that Cameron seemed to have seen enough to validate his own mind and the memories he had experienced were real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure probably just having that validated
Right.
and knowing that, that is what happened.
Right.
You just needed to get it out. You needed it to be verified.
With as much as you can,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and accept.
Yeah.
Continuing with the interview, Mark asked, "What happens to kids like Cameron when they get a little older?" Barbara replied, "The research shows that by the time children are 6 or 7, their memories of the previous life begin to fade, much in the same way that very early childhood memories fade in everyone. In most of these cases, the older children are, the more they identify with the current life until eventually the past life memories all disappear." So crazy.
Gosh, that is so crazy. And it's crazy because it's a lot of these stories that I was reading, it's anywhere between 6 and 8 is when they kind of stop talking about it.
Right. So I was watching this video about reincarnation and stuff, and it said that before the soul is allowed to come back down to earth, it has to agree to that it's not going to remember anything when it goes back to earth. And it's not a voluntary thing. They just have to accept that that's what's going to happen, and then it just happens. When they're...
But then some do remember.
As soon as... Yeah, but 90% of it is erased as soon as they're in the uterus.
Crazy.
That's what it said on the video. So they've agreed, their soul has agreed to have their memory erased mostly, and then they're in the uterus and it goes away. And they're now...
So but then how do some still remember?
Being in the uterus?
No, yeah, how if they made this agreement.
Because they still keep some of it. Not everything is erased.
Mm-hmm.
It's not...
I'm picturing Men in Black shit.
And then eventually everything is erased.
Yeah.
By the time they're 7 or 8, it's all gone.
So crazy.
Yeah. But anyways, we're gonna leave all this information in the show notes too, because we might mess up a couple details or something. It's just fascinating. So the next question Mark asked is, "I'm confused between reincarnation and rebirth. What's the difference?" So Barbara replied, "It's semantics. I've heard Tibetan Buddhists use the words interchangeably, but it's important to be clear that neither the Buddhists nor the researchers view reincarnation or rebirth as the perpetuation of a fixed personality. Though a child may remember a previous life, it's not as if Joe Blow comes back as John Doe," Tucker told me recently. "It seems that somehow, and no one claims to know exactly why, fragments of consciousness get transferred from one life to the next, and some people remember them." So Mark asked, "Can you tell me how your own personal trauma prompted you to want to explore the topic?" And Barbara replied, "Years ago, I was assigned to a magazine article on past life regression therapy. As part of my research, I had a session with Roger Woolger, a well-known Jungian psychologist. Oh yeah, because it's Carl Jung, obviously. I'm not susceptible to hypnotic suggestions, so I wasn't expecting anything to happen. But much to my surprise, I tapped into a vivid memory of being murdered during the Holocaust. The experience was incredibly powerful and devastating. I cried for days afterwards. Mark asked, "Can you bring us experientially into that? What did you see?" And she replied, "A body I took to be my body being thrown from a flatbed truck into an open grave, then being shot in the back of the head. On one level, it made a lot of sense. As a kid, I was obsessed with the Holocaust. I read every book on it I could find. My own therapist, who I saw a few days after the session with Woolger, suggested that many people who were born in the late 40s and early 50s carried memories of the Holocaust. He was the one who gave me Stevenson's book on reincarnation, which became the germ of the novel. Later, I discovered a book called Beyond the Ashes by Rabbi Gershom, in which he collects the stories of many people, Jews and non-Jews, who believe they died in the Holocaust." Can you imagine, with all the people that died in the Holocaust, they died with trauma?
They did die with
Some
trauma.
people died very young with trauma. So that's like a recipe for huge reincarnation and memories.
That's terrible.
Next, Mark asked, "How do you think trauma has affected you?" Barbara replied, "I've been prone to anxiety from the time I was quite young. Perhaps one source was the Holocaust, even though I wasn't fully aware of it until I did the session with Roger Woolger. In addition, I believe I carry some inherited trauma too. My grandmother talked about getting stoned by the Cossacks when she was a little girl playing by the river in her Lithuanian village. She remained fearful all of her life. I think I was wired for fear, and that wiring takes a long time to unwind. In a sense, unwinding it has been my life's work, and writing this novel has been part of that." So Mark asked, "What do you hope readers will take away from your book?" And Barbara replied, "Maybe just a glimmer of the idea that our lives are more vast and mysterious than the materialist view the world suggests. If we accept the possibility that consciousness doesn't end with death, then how we live now, how we treat one another, and our planet becomes even more pressing than it already is." Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it does explain so much, like the opening, what was it? Her opening statement was like, it explains things that aren't explained yet.
It fills in the gaps of what science can't explain.
Right. Because, like, science can explain a lot, but then there are definitely gaps.
I was just thinking, like, you know how, like, investigators will sometimes use, like, a psychic to help, like, solve a case? Yes. I was just thinking, I was like, I wonder if there's, like, situations where people were, like, using past life, like, people who've had a past life of a murder.
That was on one of the podcasts we were listening to.
Really?
Yeah, on the way here from Texas. So they said that people oftentimes use psychic as a way to find information. And I can't remember what they said after that, but it was really fascinating.
Right. But, like, what about, like, past life? People who have experienced past lives. Is that what you were going to say? And then also, because, like, it's just like, oh, yeah, like, I know who did it because they murdered me in my past life. It was this person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if you could find, it'd be a very specific
Especially
thing.
Especially if it overlapped, like, that first
exactly.
So the scientist, that the video of that first girl who was 18 months when it started, it was Ian Stevenson, the one that she, like, kind of followed the disciple of. Yeah. If the lives, like, overlap, that could totally be a thing.
That'd be so trippy.
Like, can you imagine, though, like, you reincarnate, you're old enough to, like, talk about it, and the guy's, like, about to, like, he's, like, 99 years old, and they catch him, or, I'm just saying. You know, and then he's like, oh,
like, he thinks he got away with it, and then you're like, I'm back, bitch.
Here I am.
Here I am. I look a little different, but I'm here.
Okay, and so, like, since our memories all fade by, like, the age we're 7, like, I wonder who the F I reincarnated as. Like, I wonder...
You know what made me laugh so hard? So, this was, like, last week or whatever. That's when I shared with you that, like, I used to have deja vu. I 100% feel like I had a past life. And you were like, I'm pretty sure this is my first time on this earth. I'm just fumbling my way through. I don't even know what you said, but you're like, I am absolutely sure this is my first time ever here. I clearly have never done this before.
Hi, I'm new here.
Hi, I'm new here.
Oh, God.
So
Yeah,
good.
no,
So there are a few YouTube videos of Dr. Ian Stevenson reviewing his cases, and in one of them, he lists a few ways to tell if someone has reincarnated. So here is the list. A child 2 or 3 years old may say, "When I was big, I ...
Yes.
You're not my mother. I want to go to my real mother." Oh my God. How heartbreaking, first of all.
I would be devastated.
I would literally just stare at Hayden and be like,
I would
hold
be
on
like,
a second.
I need a minute.
Yeah, let me
me
just
go-
go in the other room and cry my eyes
I'll
out
be
for a
sitting in
minute.
my closet.
This house is too small. My house is much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all right, turd, go outside.
Yeah. Like the girls, like the sisters who are like, we lived in the big white house.
Yeah. Before I came to you, I lived near the sea.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is interesting because the stories that I was hearing on that YouTube video, a lot of them were mentioning water. And a lot of them were mentioning like when they went home and before they like went to their mom and their dad, they were like by water. And a lot of them were like, and like the water doesn't make them wet. And it was like really interesting.
Yeah.
It was very...
That is weird.
Very bizarre. Yeah. Hey mamas, are you someone who's 35 plus and struggled with fertility, endured a miscarriage, experienced heartbreaking fostering or adoption challenges, or were perhaps flat out told by a doctor that you will never conceive naturally, and despite the odds, eventually found your happy ending by becoming a mama?
Send us your story at geriatricmamas.com. We would love to feature your journey to motherhood on a future Geriatric Mamas episode. This topic is like amazing. I couldn't stop researching it, so there's just so much I learned this week. In my research, I learned that birthmarks are a strong sign of injury and cause of death in a past life, which I personally found chilling because I always felt like if there's such a thing as past lives, then Annabelle has a very old soul, and she happens to have a significant size, specific shaped birthmark in a place that would be very compromising if she were ever injured there. When she was born and I saw it, I actually thought that the doctor had accidentally cut her on her way out since I had a C-section. Like I had like kind of a mini panic attack, like, and then I realized like it's part of her. Like it's very abrupt. So because we're recording today, when she was having her bath time or whatever, I was like looking at it and it is like, it's like a gash.
Like she was stabbed in her past life or something. Oh God.
Like it's a gash.
You know what you should do? You should ask her about it.
Yeah.
Ask her. Be like, Annabelle, where did you get this?
Yeah.
How did this happen?
Maybe that would spark something.
Just see what she says about it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, though.
Right?
What if she's like, gives you a whole story?
Yeah. So weird.
You need to like just have your phone and record just in case something weird comes out of that.
Seriously, just like always have it on record.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I was
constantly documenting.
Yeah. It's hard to do that, by the way.
It really is.
So I am now 1000% a believer. And I do think for sure, like there are some really old souls, and it's just, if it weren't for past lives or old souls actually being a thing, then it wouldn't explain like the inherent things that people just say and know. And like a lot of it, I think for Annabelle, it comes out in her emotional intelligence and her empathy. And like some people just say like, that's good parenting, but I didn't parent that.
Right.
Like
you're like, I didn't teach her how to do that.
You can't put that in someone.
Yeah. I know. I was reading too, like, in addition to the birthmarks, because I did see that also, just having like strong intuition and just like knowing.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's more than just like a gut check on something, but it's like just knowing, like, where it's like, you don't know, like, you've never experienced this thing before. There's no way you should know about this. There's no way that you researched it. You've never, like, but you just walk into a situation and you just already know how everything is going to happen or should happen or whatever.
Yeah. And that's almost like deja vu, which is also a part of it.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I was listening to while researching say that oftentimes like a past life thing does have to do with the feeling of deja vu. Which it's been a while since I've had a feeling of deja vu. Like it's very quiet. Like I have them from time
I definitely
to time.
used to have it a lot more when I was younger.
Yeah.
It's just every once in a while and I'm like, oh, this is weird. I literally have done this before. What's happening?
Yeah. It used to happen a lot more frequently and a lot more powerfully. And now it happens few and far between and it's very light, like, oh, is that Yep, that's what, it's definitely deja vu.
Like, I remember, and of course we were younger, but like, I remember literally being in and having enough time of the deja vu happening to say, I'm having deja vu right now. And then it's just like, no, it's still happening. Like, it's still happening. Like, you can feel it. It's just like a really strong, and like you're saying, intense feeling.
Right. And some of the research that I was looking at too said that your soul comes back to Earth with a purpose. There are a lot of souls up there, wherever there is that they're referring to. There are a lot of souls up there, but the souls that come back have a plan, whether made by them or the universe or whoever, and they come back down here with a purpose, a plan. And because you come down here with your memory erased, the further away you are from your plan, the more unhappy you are as a person.
I was just laughing because I'm just like, all the souls that are up there looking down on us, like, they're probably just like, seriously?
Botched that!
What?
You botched it!
Out of all of us, you picked these two idiots to like relive our lives? They're just fumbling their way through. What the fuck? This podcast? Really? Really? That's the best you got?
So they gave up on their plan, and here they are with this podcast.
Like, these bitches had one job.
Can you send us in, please?
Yeah,
coach.
Like, can we just like off them already and like just let's start over? This isn't working.
Right? When I was listening to that, I was like, please don't off me. I have a 3-year-old.
I know. I literally like, yeah. God. Sorry to disappoint everybody. We can come back and try this again.
Right. So, yeah. No, now I'm a full-blown believer, and I have, like, a lot of work to do on myself.
I was listening to various YouTube stories and stuff, and there were a few of them. So one of them that was, like, really kind of creepy was this girl was talking about kind of the same situation. Like, you're, like, I had a mom before you. Like, you're my second mom, my mom before. And she was, like, describing, like, what her mom looked like. And she was like, she used to wear her hair like this, and she used to dress like this, and she was kind of like describing like olden times, and this is like somewhere in England. And so, and she was talking about how I don't know if the Abbey is, if it was like a church, a castle, I don't know, but it's this big structure. And basically she was talking about how she grew up there, or she would go there a lot. And but now today, in today's times, like, it doesn't exist basically. Yeah. And so there was like a town that she was talking about where she used to live, didn't exist. Well, she was so adamant about it that the parents went and like researched, pulled up like old records, like town records, and they found that the town did used to exist, and it was like back in like the 1800s or something like that. And so they went to where she insisted that she grew up and where it was or whatever, and there was like this like farm, and there was like a barn, and then like the barn had like dirt, and she was just saying, the floor, I used to play like hopscotch on like the tile or the floor, and they're like, there's no tile here, this is whatever. Well, they like dug, the owner of the property, I guess, was into it or whatever, so they dug a little bit and they found tile. And so then they looked up more records, and they found that there was an old structure there. It was called the Abbey or something like that. So basically, like, there's no way that this girl, it's not like you can look it up online, it's not like anybody told her, nobody even knew about it. They had to pull up old like records to show that this is actually true. And then there was another story that I was hearing about, and it was kind of like the same situation, but the girl was talking about, it was like Christmas time, and she was saying that she wanted a wheel. And they're like, a wheel? You mean like a bike? And so they got her a bike, and she's like, no, I want a wheel. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, now fast forward, she's going on some like, I think it was like a class field trip to a museum, and there was like this old, I don't know, I think it was like back in the day, they had like literally like in like the 1700s we're talking, they had, it was like a stick and like a wheel, and kids used to play. And they saw that, and she's like, that's what I had, I used to have that. And everybody's like, what? And they had one as like to show all the kids, and she immediately went and she knew how to use it, and she was teaching all the kids how to use it.
Gosh.
Yes. And her family, her parents, because her parents were there, they were like, what?
Yeah.
And so like, it was weird. So, yeah, I literally just gave myself chills, but yeah.
So it makes sense, because you were saying when you got here that like a lot of your stuff that you looked up ended up being from England.
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense, because technically like England and like Europe have some of the oldest countries in the world, and like a lot of them either.
So if it is older, it probably would be. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
That's
like
crazy.
so many people were from like England back then.
It's true.
Know? Yeah.
Yeah. I literally could talk about this stuff all day. Like this is truly like one of my favorite topics.
And then like who knows, like maybe other cultures outside of like Western culture, like maybe more Eastern cultures are like, oh yeah, past life, obviously it's totally a thing. Like it's not even anything new.
Right.
It's not even anything fascinating.
Yeah.
It's just like facts.
Oh, I know for sure other cultures truly are already all over this.
Right. They're like, oh yeah, old news.
Yeah, like seriously, America?
Sorry you didn't know.
Yeah.
Get with the program.
I know I was telling you, I don't know, there was a Netflix documentary. There's like mini episodes. It's like one of those things where each episode shows like a different thing. And it's something about like, I don't remember what it's called, but literally I think it's like the very first episode talks about past lives. And there was like a little boy, like there was a couple stories, but I think there was 2 stories that they told, but one of them in particular was like a little boy, and he was just so adamant that he was this one person, and like he was like this famous baseball player and all this stuff. He was like really fascinated in like baseball and all these things, and they like and it was like kind of the situation where they researched it, and once he was like validated that he was right, he like let it go and he never talked about it again. Yeah.
I think they mentioned that in the Facebook comments for that viral post.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they didn't like screenshot everything, so I'll have to look it up because that would be a fun thing to watch.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all we have.
I feel like we need to do this episode again. There's just so much. I want to, and I know I said this about astrology, and I've said this about like a couple others, but I think it would be so cool to get somebody on that is truly like an expert in past lives, or you know, it would be really fun. Actually, probably don't want to do this live, but we should go get hypnotized together.
Oh, so I want to do that therapy that she was talking about that she did
to figure out what our past lives are.
When she remembered the Holocaust thing.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to know.
Me too.
Because part of that can teach you what lessons you're here to learn this life. And I just feel like I've learned so many. Have I checked off any boxes?
What if we haven't checked any boxes? We're already halfway through our life.
Like, I skipped around the boxes and got other boxes checked. Can you fucking imagine?
Yeah. What if we're checking each other's boxes?
Jesus Christ.
We'll definitely have to do that. And then depending on what we hear, we'll report our findings.
Yeah. And like,
but I would like to get somebody on here to talk about it.
Yeah, we definitely need to get someone on like to talk about it who I feel like who's like super knowledgeable but also passionate.
Well, my past self is telling me that I need a margarita. And my past self is also saying that you also need a margarita. So what do you say?
I'm really excited.
We end this bitch and we go get some margaritas.
Yeah. So reminder, you get 20% off services at Ageless Medical Aesthetics in Westbrook, Maine with the code MAMAS2024 and a free first swim class at Goldfish Swim School in Portland, Maine with the same code MAMAS2024. You'll just need to call to schedule your child's first visit.
I need to get Hayden in that now that I'm here. Yeah. I need to call them. Yeah. Mama's 2024. Use my own code.
Do it.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Be sure to tune in next week. Your support is keeping the podcast going. You can help by following, subscribing, rating, reviewing, and especially by telling a friend to listen anywhere or watch on YouTube.
For more info, you can check out our website at geriatricmamas.com. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at geriatric_mamas, on YouTube at Geriatric Mamas, on Twitter at Geriatric Mamas, and follow our group page on Facebook, Geriatric Mamas.
If you have a topic idea you'd like us to discuss, are interested in being a guest, or simply have a funny geriatric story to tell, or if you have a fun past life story to share,
please share that.
Yes, you can go to geriatricmamas.com and hit be a guest, or send us your story. Bye-bye. Do you mind if I pet your pussy?
I'm just surprised she's coming over. She's not a people person. You can pet.
How did you get Annabelle if your pussy's not a people person? That joke will never get old.